Captain Marcus Chin stepped off the shuttle onto the crystal platform. The twin suns of the Zephyrian homeworld cast strange shadows through the air. Everything around him seemed to glow with a soft blue light. The spires of the alien city reached up toward the sky like giant needles made of glass and metal. Marcus had trained for this moment for 3 years. He was Earth's best diplomat, chosen to make peace between humans and the Zephyrian Empire. The war had lasted too long. Too many ships destroyed. Too many lives lost. This meeting could end it all. The Zephyrians waiting for him were unlike anything Marcus had seen before. They stood 8 feet tall with skin that looked like natural armor. Each had 4 powerful arms that ended in sharp claws. Their faces were angular and proud. When they moved, their armor-like skin made soft clicking sounds. "Welcome, human," said the tallest Zephyrian. His voice was deep and rumbling. "I am Commander Thex. The Empress waits for you." Marcus nodded and followed them through the crystal corridors. The walls showed pictures of great battles and warrior heroes. This was clearly a society that valued strength and combat above all else. Marcus hoped his diplomatic skills would be enough. The throne room was massive. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above. Hundreds of Zephyrian nobles stood along the walls, watching Marcus with curious eyes. At the far end, on a throne made of black crystal, sat Empress Kythera. She was beautiful in an alien way. Her armor-like skin had a purple tint that caught the light. Her arms rested gracefully on her throne. Her eyes were large and golden, studying Marcus as he approached. She radiated power and authority. Marcus stopped at the proper distance and bowed as he had been taught. "Your Majesty, I come with hopes for peace between our peoples." "Human Marcus Chun," the Empress said. Her voice was musical but strong. "Your species has proven to be worthy opponents in battle. Perhaps you can be worthy allies in peace." The negotiations began well. Marcus presented Earth's terms for ending the war. The Empress listened carefully and asked good questions. Her advisors whispered among themselves, but they seemed interested in the human proposals. During a break, the Empress led Marcus to a side chamber filled with sacred artifacts. These were items of great importance to Zephyrian culture. Ancient weapons, ceremonial armor, and religious symbols filled the room. "These represent our history," the Empress explained. "Each piece tells a story of honor and courage." Marcus nodded respectfully as she showed him each item. He was genuinely interested in learning about their culture. Understanding each other was the key to lasting peace. Then, the Empress stopped before a beautiful blade mounted on a crystal stand. The weapon was clearly very old and extremely important. The metal seemed to glow with its own light. "This is the blade of first honor," she said with reverence. "It was carried by the first Empress 1,000 years ago. It has never been touched by foreign hands." Marcus leaned closer to examine the intricate carvings on the blade. The craftsmanship was incredible. He could see why the Zephyrians treasured it so much. "The metal is amazing," Marcus said. "What gives it that glow?" "It contains crystals from our holiest mountain," the Empress replied. "The blade is said to hold the spirits of ancient warriors." As Marcus shifted to get a better view, his sleeve caught on the crystal stand. The entire display wobbled dangerously. Marcus quickly reached out to steady it, but his human reflexes were too slow for the alien technology. The blade of first honor fell to the floor with a terrible sound. The ancient metal cracked against the crystal platform. A piece of the sacred blade broke away and skittered across the floor. The silence that followed was complete and terrifying. Every Zephyrian in the chamber stared at the broken blade. Their faces showed shock and horror. Marcus felt his heart sink as he realized what had just happened. The Empress's golden eyes blazed with anger. Her forehands clenched into fists. "You have broken the most sacred artifact of our people," she said in a voice like ice. "Your Majesty, I am so sorry," Marcus began. "It was an accident. I was only trying to dash silence." The Empress's shout echoed through the chamber. "The blade of first honor has been destroyed by foreign hands. This is the greatest insult possible to our people." Guards rushed into the chamber. Their weapons were drawn and pointed at Marcus. He raised his hands to show he meant no threat, but he knew it was too late. The negotiations were over before they had really begun. "The talks are finished," the Empress declared. "You will be executed for this blasphemy against our ancestors." "Please," Marcus said desperately. If you must punish someone, punish only me. My crew had nothing to do with this. They are innocent. The Empress studied him with those burning golden eyes. Around them, her nobles muttered angrily among themselves. Marcus could hear the word for death repeated many times in their harsh language. You would die to protect your followers? The Empress asked. Yes, Marcus replied without hesitation. They came here in good faith. I am responsible for what happened. Something changed in the Empress's expression. The anger was still there, but now there was curiosity too. She seemed to be thinking about something important. There is an ancient law, she said slowly, one that has not been used for many years. Trial by combat. The room fell silent again. Even the angry muttering stopped. If you can defeat our greatest champion in single combat, your crime will be forgiven, the Empress continued. More than that, victory would make you worthy of the highest honor our people can give. And what honor is that? Marcus asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. The Empress stood from her throne. Her forearms spread wide as she made a formal declaration. Defeat our champion, human, and you will earn my hand in marriage. Our peoples will be united forever. Marcus felt the weight of those words. Marriage to the Empress would create an alliance between their species. It would mean peace. But first, he would have to survive combat against the greatest warrior the Zephyrians had. The Empress turned toward the far end of the chamber. There, standing in the shadows, was the largest Zephyrian Marcus had ever seen. The warrior stepped forward into the light, and Marcus's blood ran cold. Human, the Empress said, her voice carrying across the silent throne room. She raised one of her 4 hands and pointed directly at the massive figure approaching them. Meet General Vorthak, champion of our people. Defeat him, and you earn my hand. General Vorthak stepped into the light like death itself taking form. He stood 9 feet tall, making even the other Zephyrians look small beside him. His armor-like skin was covered in scars from countless battles. Each scar told a story of victory, of enemies who had fallen before his might. The general carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. His 4 massive arms moved with deadly grace. At his sides hung 4 curved blades, each one designed perfectly for Zephyrian combat. The weapons seemed to hum with menace. Marcus tried not to show his fear as Vorthak approached. The general's eyes were cold and calculating. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone. So this is the human who thinks he can face me, Vorthak said. I have killed creatures twice your size, little one. I have defeated the greatest warriors of a dozen worlds. I seek no fight with you, Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady. But I will defend myself if I must. Vorthak laughed, a sound like breaking rocks. You will die tomorrow, human, but you will die with honor. That is more than most of my enemies can claim. The Empress raised her hand for silence. The combat will take place at dawn in the Crimson Colosseum. Until then, you may prepare as you wish. She looked directly at Marcus. Choose your weapons and armor from our traditional arsenal. Foreign equipment is forbidden. Marcus bowed to the Empress, then to General Vorthak. The general returned the bow with military precision. Despite everything, Marcus could see this was a warrior who respected the rules of honor. 2 guards escorted Marcus to a chamber in the palace. It was comfortable, but clearly a prison. The windows were too high to reach, and the door locked from the outside. Marcus sat on the bed and tried to process what had happened. In one day, he had gone from diplomat to condemned man to potential bridegroom. If he somehow won tomorrow, he would be married to an alien empress and responsible for uniting 2 species. If he lost, he would be dead. A soft knock came at the door. A Zephyrian entered, older than the others Marcus had met. His armor-like skin was silver with age, and he moved with the careful steps of someone whose fighting days were behind him. I am Master Kelthan, the old warrior said. The Empress has asked me to teach you our ways of combat. Marcus stood and bowed. I am honored by your presence, Master. Do not be honored yet, Kelthan replied. First, survive tomorrow. Then, we can speak of honor. The old master led Marcus to a training chamber beneath the palace. The room was filled with practice weapons and training equipment. Everything was built for Zephyrian physiology, 4-armed fighters with natural armor and deadly claws. Show me how humans fight, Kelthan said, handing Marcus a practice blade. Marcus took the weapon and demonstrated some basic human sword techniques. The blade felt wrong in his hands. It was too heavy, designed for creatures much stronger than humans. His movements looked clumsy compared to the flowing grace of Zephyrian combat. Interesting, Kelvin mused. Your style is different, more direct, less beautiful. We fight to win, Marcus said. Beauty comes second to survival. A practical approach. The old master picked up 4 practice blades with his 4 arms. Now watch how we fight. Kelvin began a demonstration that took Marcus's breath away. The old warrior moved like a deadly dancer, for blades weaving patterns in the air. Every movement flowed into the next. It was combat as art form, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. This is the 3rd form of the spiral, Kelvin explained as he moved. Each form builds on the last. There are 17 forms in total, each more complex than the previous. Marcus watched carefully, trying to memorize the patterns. But, even as he admired the skill, he noticed something important. The forms were predictable. Beautiful, but predictable. How long does it take to master all 17 forms? Marcus asked. A lifetime, Kelvin replied. Vorthak has mastered them all. He is the greatest warrior our people have produced in 3 generations. That evening, Kelvin showed Marcus recordings of Vorthak's previous battles. The general had fought in the Great Arena 847 times, and had never lost. Marcus watched as Vorthak defeated opponents from a dozen different species. Every fight followed the same pattern. Vorthak would begin with overwhelming aggression, using his superior size and strength to dominate his opponent. His 4 blades moved in perfect harmony, following the ancient forms. Most enemies fell within minutes. He is magnificent, Kelvin said with obvious admiration. See how he flows from 7th form to 12th? Perfect technique. Marcus studied the recordings more carefully. Vorthak was indeed magnificent, but he was also predictable. Every victory came the same way, through superior execution of traditional techniques. No opponent had ever forced him to adapt or improvise. Master Kelvin, Marcus said slowly. Has anyone ever tried fighting differently? Not using your traditional forms? The old warrior looked puzzled. Why would they? Our forms have been perfected over centuries. They are the ultimate expression of combat skill. But what if someone fought in a way your forms don't account for? Kelvin considered this. Impossible. The forms cover every possible combat situation. They are complete. Marcus wasn't so sure. Human military doctrine emphasized adaptability and improvisation. The ability to do the unexpected was often the key to victory. But he kept these thoughts to himself. That night, Marcus lay awake thinking about what he had learned. Vorthak was bigger, stronger, faster, and infinitely more skilled with Zephyrian weapons. In a traditional fight using their rules, Marcus would lose in seconds. But humans had never been the biggest or strongest predators on Earth. They had survived and thrived through intelligence, adaptability, and endurance. Early humans had hunted giant mammoths not through strength, but through persistence and cunning. Marcus thought about his own species' evolution. Humans were persistence hunters. They could run for hours while other predators tired after short bursts. They could adapt to any environment and find solutions others couldn't imagine. Maybe the key wasn't to fight like a Zephyrian. Maybe the key was to fight like a human. As dawn approached, Marcus made his decision. He would enter the arena with Zephyrian weapons and armor as required. But he would not fight like a Zephyrian. He would fight like what he was, a human being facing impossible odds with nothing but his wits and determination. The sun rose over the crystal city, casting long shadows through Marcus's window. In a few hours, he would face the greatest warrior the Zephyrian Empire had ever produced. He was probably going to die, but he was going to make Vorthak work for it. The Crimson Colosseum was carved from a single massive geode. The walls sparkled with red and purple crystals that caught the morning light. 100,000 Zephyrians filled the seats, their voices creating a thunderous roar that shook the air itself. Marcus stood in the preparation chamber beneath the arena floor. The traditional armor felt heavy and awkward on his human frame. It was designed for a four-armed fighter with natural protection, not for someone like him. The 4 curved blades at his belt were almost too heavy to lift properly. The odds are 1,000 to 1 against you. said the arena master, a grizzled old Zephyrian with battle scars covering his arms. "No one expects you to last more than a few minutes." Marcus nodded. He had expected as much. "What happens to my crew if I lose?" "They will be allowed to return to human space," the arena master replied. "The Empress has given her word on this." That was some comfort at least. Marcus's team would survive even if he didn't. The mission to make peace had failed, but at least they would live to try again another day. A horn sounded from above. The arena master gestured toward the gate. "It is time, human. May you die with honor." The gate opened with a grinding of crystal mechanisms. Light flooded in from the arena floor above. Marcus could hear the crowd's roar growing louder. He took a deep breath and walked into the light. The arena floor was covered in red sand that crunched under his feet. The walls rose up around him like the inside of a giant crystal cave. Everywhere he looked, thousands of Zephyrians watched from the seats. Their voices created a wall of sound that pressed down on him like a physical weight. At the far end of the arena, another gate began to open. The crowd's roar changed to a chant. "Vorthak! Vorthak! Vorthak!" They stamped their feet in rhythm, making the entire Colosseum shake. Marcus looked up at the royal box. Empress Kythera sat on her crystal throne, surrounded by her nobles and advisors. She watched him with those golden eyes, her expression impossible to read. Did she want him to win? Or was this just a way to execute him with honor? The chanting grew louder as General Vorthak entered the arena. The champion strode across the red sand like he owned it. He was even more impressive in the bright arena light. 9 feet of pure warrior, his scarred skin gleaming like polished armor. Vorthak carried his 4 blades with casual ease. Each weapon was a work of art, perfectly balanced and razor-sharp. When he moved, the blades sang through the air with deadly music. The crowd loved him. They cheered and shouted his name as he walked to the center of the arena. Some threw flowers that sparkled like jewels in the sunlight. Others waved banners with symbols of his great victories. Marcus walked to meet his opponent. Every step felt like it might be his last. The sand under his feet was stained dark in places, the blood of previous fighters who had died in this place. An official in ceremonial robes stepped between them. He raised his arms, and the crowd gradually fell silent. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the crystal acoustics of the arena. "Citizens of the Empire, today we witness trial by combat. The human Marcus Chun has broken our most sacred artifact. General Vorthak will defend our honor." The crowd roared its approval. Someone threw something at Marcus that missed his head by inches. "The rules are simple," the official continued. "Traditional weapons and armor only. The fight continues until one yields or dies. There will be no mercy." The official looked at both fighters. "Do you understand the terms?" "I understand," Vorthak rumbled. "I understand," Marcus replied, surprised his voice didn't shake. "Then, prepare for combat." The official withdrew to the edge of the arena. Marcus and Vorthak faced each other across 10 feet of red sand. The silence that followed was complete. 100,000 spectators held their breath. Vorthak began the ritual pre-combat display. He drew all 4 of his blades in a smooth, practiced motion. Then, he began a kata, a formal demonstration of fighting techniques that was both beautiful and deadly. The general moved like liquid death. His 4 blades wove patterns in the air that seemed to defy physics. Each movement flowed into the next with perfect grace. If Marcus had been standing closer, the display would have cut him to pieces. The crowd went wild. They loved the artistry of it, the perfect execution of forms that had been practiced for centuries. This was their greatest champion showing why he had never been defeated. Marcus watched carefully. The display was magnificent, but it told him exactly what he needed to know. Vorthak fought like a classical master. Perfect technique, flawless form, completely predictable. When the kata ended, Vorthak pointed all 4 blades at Marcus. "Are you ready to die, human?" "I'm ready to try living," Marcus replied. The horn sounded. The fight began. Vorthak immediately launched into his standard opening attack, the 7th form transitioning into the 9th. His 4 blades came at Marcus from impossible angles, seeking to end the fight in the first exchange. Marcus barely managed to get his own weapons up in time. The impact of blade on blade sent shock waves up his arms. Vorthak's strength was incredible. Each strike felt like being hit by a machine. But Marcus had expected this. He didn't try to match Vorthack's power. Instead, he used his smaller size and human agility to slip away from the worst of the attack. He gave ground quickly, backpedaling across the sand. The crowd laughed. To them, it looked like the human was simply running away. They had seen this before, weaker opponents trying to delay the inevitable by avoiding combat. But Marcus wasn't running randomly. He was studying his opponent while staying alive. Each exchange taught him more about Vorthack's style and timing. Vorthack pressed his attack, flowing from one combat form to another. His blades were everywhere, seeking any opening in Marcus's desperate defense. The general was magnificent, exactly what legends said about him. Marcus continued to give ground, barely staying ahead of the deadly blade work. Sweat ran down his face as he struggled with the heavy weapons. The crowd's laughter grew louder. Then, Marcus did something that sent a shock of silence through the arena. He dropped 3 of his 4 blades. The weapons clattered onto the red sand with metallic rings that echoed through the sudden quiet. Marcus stood facing the greatest warrior in the Zephyrian Empire with only a single blade in his hands. The crowd didn't know what to make of it. Fighting with one weapon wasn't just unconventional. It was considered madness. No warrior had ever voluntarily given up 3/4 of their offensive capability. Vorthack stopped his attack, staring at the human in confusion. "What are you doing?" Marcus shifted his grip on his remaining blade. Without the weight of 3 other weapons, he suddenly felt light and fast, fighting like a human. The arena fell completely silent. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. The silence stretched across the arena like a held breath. Vorthack stared at Marcus with complete bewilderment. In his 847 victories, no opponent had ever done anything this strange. "You have gone mad with fear," Vorthack declared. "One blade cannot defeat 4. "Let's find out," Marcus replied. He shifted into a stance that no Zephyrian had ever seen. It was loose and flexible, ready to move in any direction. Marcus held his single blade like an extension of his arm, not like a ceremonial weapon designed for ritual combat. Vorthack shook his massive head and resumed his attack. He used the 12th form this time, a complex pattern designed to overwhelm any defense. 4 blades came at Marcus from angles that should have been impossible to counter. But something was different now. Marcus moved like water, flowing around the attack instead of trying to block it. Without 3 extra weapons weighing him down, he was suddenly fast. Faster than Vorthack had expected. The general's blades cut only air where Marcus had been a split second before. The human slipped past his guard and landed a quick cut on Vorthack's arm. It was just a shallow scratch across the natural armor, but it drew first blood. The crowd gasped. No one had touched Vorthack in combat for 3 years. "Impossible," Vorthack muttered, looking at the thin line of purple blood on his arm. "Very possible," Marcus said. He was breathing hard, but grinning. "You just never fought anyone who didn't follow your rules." Vorthack's eyes blazed with fury. He launched into a more aggressive assault, chaining together forms that should have reduced his opponent to ribbons. His 4 blades became a whirlwind of deadly steel. But Marcus was no longer fighting like a Zephyrian. He wasn't trying to match Vorthack's beautiful, formal techniques. Instead, he fought like what he was, a human being whose ancestors had survived by being cleverer than bigger, stronger predators. Marcus used the arena itself as a weapon. He leaped off the crystal walls, slid under Vorthack's strikes, and attacked from angles that the formal combat forms never anticipated. When Vorthack expected him to retreat, Marcus advanced. When the general prepared for a frontal assault, Marcus attacked from the side. The crowd began to murmur with interest. This wasn't the quick execution they had expected. The human was actually fighting back, and in ways they had never seen before. Marcus landed another cut, this one across Vorthack's thigh. Then, another on his shoulder. Each wound was small, but they were adding up. Purple blood began to stain the red sand. More importantly, Vorthack was beginning to breathe hard. The general had trained for formal duels that followed predictable patterns. He wasn't prepared for a fight that required constant adaptation and improvisation. Marcus, meanwhile, was finding his rhythm. His human endurance was serving him well. Where Vorthack fought in powerful bursts like a big cat, Marcus could maintain his pace like the persistence hunter his species had evolved to be. Stand still and fight. Vorthak roared in frustration. No, Marcus replied simply. The general tried the 15th form, one of the most complex and deadly patterns in Zephyrian combat. It was a masterpiece of martial artistry that had never failed to destroy an opponent. Marcus ignored the artistry entirely. He focused on what the attack actually was, 4 blades coming at him in a predictable sequence. He had been watching Vorthak long enough to see the pattern. As the blades came down, Marcus did something no Zephyrian warrior would ever consider. He stepped inside the attack instead of away from it, moving closer to danger instead of farther from it. The move put him too close for Vorthak's blades to be fully effective. The general's superior reach became a disadvantage at close quarters. Marcus drove his elbow into Vorthak's solar plexus, then followed up with a knee strike to the ribs. Vorthak staggered backward, gasping. He had taken hits that his armor couldn't absorb. The crowd was on its feet now, cheering for both fighters. You fight like a wild animal, Vorthak panted. I fight like a human, Marcus corrected. We don't have your armor or your strength. We survive by being smart and stubborn. Vorthak wiped purple blood from a cut on his forehead. For the first time in his career, he was losing a fight. The realization seemed to break something inside him. The general's perfect form began to crumble. Frustration replaced discipline. He abandoned the elegant patterns he had spent a lifetime mastering and began swinging his blades in wild, powerful arcs. Marcus had been waiting for this moment. A frustrated opponent made mistakes. An angry fighter left openings that a calm one never would. As Vorthak swung all 4 blades in a devastating horizontal sweep, Marcus dropped to the ground and swept the general's legs. The massive warrior crashed to the sand with a tremendous impact that shook the arena. Marcus rolled away and came to his feet, blade ready. But Vorthak was slower to rise. The accumulated damage was taking its toll. Dozens of small cuts covered his body, and he was breathing like he had just run a marathon. You cannot win, Vorthak said, struggling to his feet. I am the greatest warrior of my people. Maybe, Marcus agreed. But I'm something you've never faced before. I'm a human being who refuses to quit. The general made one last desperate attempt. He threw himself forward in a wild charge, all 4 blades extended like spears. It was a move born of desperation rather than skill, exactly what Marcus had been waiting for. Marcus stepped aside at the last second. Vorthak's momentum carried him past, unable to change direction. As the general stumbled past, Marcus did something that no formal combat training had prepared Vorthak for. He tackled him. The 2 fighters went down in a tangle of limbs and blades. They rolled across the sand, fighting for position. Marcus had wrestled in college, but Vorthak had 4 arms and natural armor. For a moment, the outcome was in doubt. Then, Marcus managed to get behind the exhausted general and lock his arm around Vorthak's throat. His blade pressed against the Zephyrian's neck, just above the natural armor. Yield, Marcus whispered. Vorthak struggled for a moment longer, then went still. The greatest warrior in the Zephyrian Empire lay defeated in the red sand, with a human holding a blade to his throat. The arena fell completely silent. 100,000 Zephyrians stared in shock at an impossible sight. Their undefeated champion had been beaten by a small, weak alien who fought like no warrior they had ever seen. Marcus looked up at the royal box. Empress Kithara was standing, her golden eyes wide with amazement. She nodded once, a gesture of respect from one fighter to another. Marcus could have killed Vorthak then. The rules of the arena would have allowed it. Instead, he helped the defeated general to his feet and offered him his blade back in a gesture of respect. The crowd erupted in cheers that shook the very foundations of the Crystal Colosseum. The cheering seemed to go on forever. Marcus stood in the center of the arena, still breathing hard from the fight. Around him, 100,000 Zephyrians were on their feet, shouting and applauding. They had come expecting to see their champion destroy a weak alien. Instead, they had witnessed something they would never forget. General Vorthak accepted his blade back with dignity. Despite his defeat, he carried himself like the warrior he was. Purple blood stained his armor-like skin, but his eyes showed respect rather than shame. You fought with honor, Vorthak said formally. I have learned something today. What did you learn? Marcus asked. That strength comes in many forms, the general replied. Your people may be small, but they are not weak. The arena officials were unsure what to do. This situation had never occurred before in their long history. After several minutes of confused discussion, they gestured for both fighters to approach the royal box. Empress Kithara descended from her crystal throne and walked to the edge of the platform overlooking the arena floor. Her golden eyes studied Marcus with intense curiosity. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the crystal acoustics. Human Marcus Chun, you have achieved the impossible. You have defeated our greatest champion in fair combat. She paused, and the arena fell completely silent. According to our ancient laws, you have earned the right to my hand in marriage. The crowd held its breath. This was the moment that would determine the future relationship between their species. Marcus looked up at the beautiful alien empress. Marriage to her would create an alliance between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire. It would mean peace, trade, and cooperation. It would also mean spending the rest of his life on an alien world, bound to a woman he barely knew. Your Majesty, Marcus said carefully, I am honored beyond words by your offer. But, before I answer, may I ask you something? Speak, the Empress replied. Why did you really make this challenge? Was it just about the broken blade? Kithara was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the crowd waited to hear her answer. Finally, she spoke with a voice that carried both authority and vulnerability. No, human Marcus Chun. It was not about the blade. She gestured for him to come closer. Marcus climbed the steps to the royal platform, still wearing his battered armor. Up close, he could see that the Empress's golden eyes were troubled. Our empire faces enemies that our traditional ways cannot defeat, she said quietly, so only he could hear. We are a proud warrior race, but our pride has made us rigid. We fight the same way our ancestors did 1,000 years ago. And that's not working anymore. Marcus guessed. No, we win individual battles through superior strength and skill. But we lose wars because we cannot adapt to new threats. She looked down at the arena floor where Vorthak was helping to clean up the scattered weapons. Today, I watched our greatest champion be defeated by someone who fought in ways we never imagined. I needed to know if your people possess qualities that could help us evolve. Marcus began to understand. You weren't testing my strength. You were testing human thinking. Yes, and you proved that humans do more than just fight differently. You think differently. You adapt, improvise, show mercy, and find solutions that others cannot imagine. The Empress turned to address the crowd. Her voice rang out across the arena with royal authority. Citizens of the Empire, today has shown us that there is more than one way to be strong. This human has defeated our champion not through superior power, but through superior adaptability. He has shown mercy to a fallen opponent. He has demonstrated qualities that we must learn if our empire is to survive. The crowd murmured among themselves. This was not what they had expected to hear from their traditional warrior empress. Kithara turned back to Marcus. So I ask you again, human, will you accept my hand and help forge a new future for both our peoples? Marcus thought carefully before answering. Your Majesty, you honor me greatly. But I think there might be a better way to help our peoples than through marriage. The Empress raised an eyebrow. Explain. What both our species need is not a political marriage, but understanding. Cultural exchange. Your people could teach humans about honor, discipline, and combat artistry. My people could teach yours about adaptability, innovation, and thinking outside traditional patterns. You refuse my offer? There was no anger in her voice, only curiosity. I'm suggesting a different kind of alliance, Marcus said. Not based on marriage, but on mutual learning. I would like to remain as Earth's permanent ambassador to your world. General Vorthak could come to Earth to study human combat methods. We could establish exchange programs, joint training facilities, cultural missions. The Empress considered this. Around them, the crowd waited to hear her decision. You would rather be an ambassador than an emperor? She asked. I would rather be a bridge between our peoples than a symbol of conquest, Marcus replied. For the first time since he had met her, Empress Kithara smiled. It transformed her entire face, making her look younger and more approachable. You continue to surprise me, human. Very well. I accept your proposal. She turned to address the crowd again. Let it be known that Earth and The Zephyrian Empire will establish a new kind of alliance. Not through marriage, but through mutual respect and learning. The crowd cheered again, though Marcus suspected many of them didn't fully understand what had just been decided. Over the following weeks, the details were worked out. Marcus remained on the Zephyrian homeworld as Earth's first permanent ambassador. General Vorthak volunteered to be the first Zephyrian exchange officer to visit Earth. The two former opponents became unlikely friends. Vorthak was fascinated by human combat methods that emphasized adaptability over formal technique. Marcus learned to appreciate the artistry and discipline of Zephyrian martial traditions. 6 months later, the first joint human-Zephyrian training academy opened on a neutral world between their territories. Students from both species learned from each other, combining the best of their different approaches to combat and problem-solving. Standing in the academy's main hall, Marcus watched human and Zephyrian students sparring together. They moved like dancers, blending formal technique with creative improvisation. It was beautiful to watch. General Vorthak joined him at the observation window. The big warrior had adapted well to human training methods, though he still preferred his traditional four-blade fighting style. "Do you ever regret your choice?" Vorthak asked. "You could have been married to an empress." Marcus smiled. "No regrets. This is better. We're not just uniting two royal houses. We're uniting two ways of thinking." "The Empress agrees," Vorthak said. "She told me yesterday that your refusal taught her more about humans than your victory in the arena." "How so?" "You chose the harder path because it was the right path." "That is very human," she said. Marcus nodded. It was very human. And maybe that was exactly what the galaxy needed more of. Beings who chose to do what was right instead of what was easy. Outside the academy, ships from both species came and went, carrying students, teachers, diplomats, and traders. The war between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire had ended not in conquest, but in cooperation. And it had all started with one broken blade, and a human who refused to fight by anyone else's rules but his own.